Good afternoon, Rowan. It's the 25th of November 2016, and obviously this is my usual Friday video to reassure you I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Anyway, I thought I'd make this video quite early today, so I can relax this evening, hopefully, if my neighbours aren't being too much of a nuisance, and I won't have to think about you at all. I can just be dreaming about my beloved, because he's so wonderful, and we're made for each other. I just can't believe how sexy he is. Anyway, I thought we could continue our little chat today about your bizarre article in the New Statesman. I was going to make some more videos this week, but I couldn't be bothered. So here we are again on Friday, and this is what I'm going to be talking about. So, mass democracy has failed. This is the title of your article, and I'm going to come on to one or two things that you say in it in a moment. Here's the first part I'm going to comment about here. The politics of mass democracy has failed. It has been narrowed down to a mechanism for managing large-scale interests in response to explicit and implicit lobbying by fabulously well-resourced commercial and financial concerns. Well, this is true, actually, and it's even more true in the United States than it is here. The American political system is very manipulated by outside concerns, shall we say. It's not all above board, and it's just the American people voting. There's far more to it than that. But I would point out that Donald Trump actually financed his own presidential campaign, and he wasn't taking money from interest groups the way that Hillary Clinton was, but you don't seem to want to criticise her for some reason. And then you say, ironically, one of the things that Trump has undertaken to change. Well, why is that ironic then, Rowan? Why is it ironic? Let's think why it might be ironic. Well, the reason is because you've already decided that Donald Trump is the devil incarnate. And it doesn't matter what he says or does about anything. Even if he sprouted wings and a halo, you'd still be criticising him and making out he was the worst thing that ever happened on the face of the earth. So, because this is what you've done to me, isn't it? You've decided what kind of person I am, and absolutely nothing is ever going to persuade you any different. So this is how you categorise people, and rather like I've said before, it's kind of like you're the novelist, and everybody is a character in your novel, and you decide the character of the person and how they're going to act and what the outcome of the situation is going to be. So it really doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. You've already decided his character, and nothing he says or does will ever persuade you any different. So it isn't really ironic that that's one of the things that Trump has undertaken to change, but the fact that you've used the word ironically just betrays the fact that you've already decided his character and his interests, and the way you imagine he's going to act. Instead of the chilling neo-Soviet talk about something called the people and its supposed will. Well, this is very interesting, Rowan, but let me tell you this. Taking communism and changing its name to something else isn't going to make it any less communist, is it? Communism, by any other name, is still communism, and you promote many communist ideas like high taxation, redistribution of wealth, not only within nations but at a global level as well. You're on video, and I've showed examples of you talking about that before, and saying that people should be proud of the amount of tax they pay and that kind of thing. So it's no good promoting communism and saying that it's something else. So talking about the the chilling neo-Soviet talk about something which isn't exactly, which isn't communist, in fact, when you're promoting communism. So you're turning things on their head now and pretending you're critical of communist dictatorships, when actually you want to be controlling everybody and telling them how to live and what to do with their money and all this kind of thing. So it's disingenuous to use this technique, but it's one of your usual techniques of obfuscation. If someone criticises you for something, you'll say the person has a problem, or you'll say that they didn't understand what you were saying, because obviously you're intellectually superior to everyone else. I'm not saying that in a literal sense. I'm being ironic. I'm saying that this is what you think about your relationship to other people, that you're superior to everybody else. So if people criticise what you're saying, you can't wriggle out of it. You'll say, oh, well, they didn't really understand what I was saying. They're not as sophisticated as me, you see. This is your attitude, isn't it? This is another one of your techniques for evading criticism. Instead of the chilling neo-Soviet talk about something called the people and its supposed will, we need a better analysis of and investment in local civic activism. So I'm not really too sure what you're intending by this, even. A better analysis of and investment in local civic activism. Well, who's going to be analysing and who's going to be investing? That's my question about that. So you're still promoting a kind of central planning here, really, aren't you? Because of you talking about analysis and investment in local civic activism. So if people are active locally, then they're already doing that, aren't they? So why would they need any analysis or investment, and why wouldn't they be able to procure that themselves? So you're still implying that there's some central force or agency that's coming into these localities where people are activists, aren't you? And then you say, and this implies a rethink of party politics as we have received it. The conventional accounts of what is right and left are fast becoming tribal signals rather than useful moral categories. It's always been a tribal signal, isn't it? It's a kind of collectivist idea belonging to a political party, really. You do subsume your own individual, perhaps political opinions or moral ideas about how people should act in society in order to join a political party to some degree, because the party has its policies and members of the party may not be in total agreement with all the policies of the party, even members of parliament and so on. It is really a kind of tribal system anyway, if you're on the left and the right. It hasn't fast become that, it's always been that. So, well, what are you proposing here as an alternative anyway? This local civic activism, but you're still implying central planning and government there, aren't you? So you're not in fact saying anything any different. And the other factor is that this is an article basically complaining about the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. And you've also earlier this year been complaining about Brexit as well. So the fact that you're so angry and offended and outraged that these things have happened isn't really congruous with this opinion that we need more investment in local and civic activism, because people don't need Hillary Clinton to be President of the United States for this to occur, do they? And Britain doesn't need to be part of the European Union for this to happen either, does it? So this isn't really what you care about. You're just trying another tactic to get people to go along with your agenda and to agree with what you say, and implying that they don't really understand what's going on. They don't really understand what you're driving at. And then with your promotion of Soviet Stalinist dictatorships, and you talk about the chilling neo-Soviet talk. Well, you're the one who's talking the chilling neo-Soviet talk, and your extreme left-wing views are very well known among people who know you, and you stated them quite openly yourself. I'm going to show some slides of screenshots of articles in a moment when I've finished commenting on this, and also a couple of clips of you promoting extreme left-wing ideas. So it's a bit late in the day of your life to be describing right and left as tribal signals. And not useful moral categories, because you don't fit into a moral category, do you? And if we were going to put you in a moral category, so to speak, it would be amoral, wouldn't it? Because you're not even sticking to your stated opinions here and saying, well, yes, you know, I do think the communist system would be better, or the socialist system. You're not being open about your political agenda. You're acting in a subversive way. I'm not complaining if you're communist. Well, just tell us your arguments in the open, and don't behave in this subversive, manipulative way, pulling the wool over people's eyes, pretending your intention is one thing when it's in fact another. That's what I'm complaining about. You can have any political opinion you want. I'm not bothered about that. So it's a bit late in the day to be complaining about these tribal signals of left and right when you've aligned yourself with the extreme left for all of your adult life, and that is very well known. You were in a very left-wing group of Christian activists, a very well-known one in the 1970s and 1980s, and in fact you were on an MI5 watch list because of this. There's an article in the Daily Telegraph about that. So it's far too late in the day for you to be unaligning yourself, so to speak, with the left wing and with communism. You're being disingenuous again. And I would also point out that only a month ago as well, this article that I'm quoting from now appeared in the New Statesman on the 17th of November 2016. Well, in a book review that you wrote in the New Statesman, which appeared on the 18th of October 2016, just a month before, you were describing being right-thinking and left-leaning as the same thing. And I've included that screenshot in the slideshow that I'm going to show now.
It used to be said, and perhaps it's still said, that if the Communist Party of Great Britain had had the geographical network and the resources that the Christian Church, and particularly the Church of England, has in these islands, we would have been a Stalinist dictatorship many years ago.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We meet as people of faith in the context of this critical moment in human history. And so we are not here just to plead or harangue, let alone to encourage panic and terror. We are here to say two simple things to ourselves, our neighbours, and our governments. First, don't be afraid, but ask how the policies you follow and the lifestyle that you take for granted look in the light of the command to love the world you inhabit. Ask what would be a healthy and sustainable relationship with this world. How shall we build international institutions that make sure the resources get where they are needed? That, for example, green taxes will deliver more security for the disadvantaged. That transitions in economic patterns will not weigh most heavily on those least equipped to cope.
I would love to live in a society where people were proud of the levels of tax they paid. You know, because I think in a well-run democratic society, a realistic level of taxation would represent that interconnectedness that we live from.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not holding my breath. I'm really not holding my breath. But I do feel that sorting out...
tax as a kind of sharing.
Yeah, tax is a kind of sharing. And the various ways in which we've colluded over the years with less than transparent and less than equitable tax arrangements is a bit shameful. We're waking up to it, bit by bit. I have a bit of an axe to grind in that this has been a major policy priority, thank you, for Christian aid in recent years. And slowly, as I say, we're catching up with an issue which we've allowed to drift because of this assumption, deeply entrenched, that tax is an alien imposition. Somebody out there is taking our money, and thank you, robbing us of our goods, rather than seeing it as just part of the circulation of blood in the body politic.
So this one kind of follows on from the last one that I was talking about. What will it take to reacquaint people with control over their communities, shared and realistic values, patience with difference, and confident in their capacity for intelligent negotiation? Well, why are you saying that people don't have these things already? Shared and realistic values, patience with difference, and confidence in their capacity for intelligent negotiation. The majority of people have these things already. And even if they didn't have them, what exactly is some centralised force going to do about this, apart from take away people's individual agency even more, and erode people's confidence in thinking that they have the resources to solve their own problems? So none of the things that you're saying make any sense in this context. Because you're still promoting centralised government, even though you're pretending that you want to give people more power. You're all for taking power away from people and acting with the attitude that people just can't manage without some idiot like you telling them what to do and how to think. And this isn't the first time either that you've implied that the way that people in general have acted or are acting is lacking intelligence, because the only kind of intelligence that you'll accept is the intelligence of agreeing with you and going along with your agenda, and you're not presenting any intelligent arguments. It's all impressionistic statements and smearing your political opponents, as I've said many times before. And you say that this is the opposite of what Trump has appealed to. Well, where is your evidence for that as well? Where is your evidence? You make continual impressionistic statements about Donald Trump. You've said previously things like witness his language about Muslims and Mexicans, but you don't tell us what his language is. What is the language that he's using that you're objecting to? You don't tell us that. You just make impressionistic statements. I've made a video about this before, and your impressionistic statements about Donald Trump in an article that was in a British newspaper sometime last year. So you say, the question is whether the appalling clarity of this opposition can wake us up to work harder for the authentic and humane politics that seems in such short supply. So what exactly are authentic politics? I mean, if we're talking about party politics here, which you seem to be talking about really, then what is not authentic about them if people are saying what they think and Donald Trump is saying what he thinks and people are acting on what they believe will be the best thing by voting a certain way, then what isn't authentic about that? I mean, apart from the fact that the political system is very manipulated and not everything is above board and out in the open, but you could hardly propose to be moving politics in that direction towards authenticity, could you? When you're a subversive agent and your identity isn't even what you say it is. I mean, you present yourself as a Christian, as I've said, a very high profile Christian as well. And you present yourself as if you believed in Orthodox Christian beliefs, although when we look at the things that you're actually saying, that clearly isn't the case. So for you to be arguing for authenticity is absolutely hilarious, really. I mean, and once again, I bring it back to your personal attitude and beliefs and behaviour. You really need to be looking at yourself. So if you want politics to go in a more authentic direction, I would suggest you start with yourself and stop behaving in this subversive way. And as I've just been talking about in relation to the last screenshot that I was talking about, you're now saying that this politics of right and left is very bad and Stalinism is bad. This is what you're implying. When previously you've been promoting these things and promoting this ideology, and you're still promoting this ideology, but you've kind of changed the name of it, and you're now saying it's all about local communities having more control, when you're still arguing for centralised authority and objecting to the democratic process when it goes against the direction of centralised power, like Britain leaving the European Union, like Donald Trump being elected and stating that he really wants to stop immigration, illegal immigration into the United States, and stop expansionist globalist wars by the American government sending the American military to foreign countries and that kind of thing. So even though Donald Trump is proposing to act in a way that you're supposed to be arguing for, you really venomously hate him. Which is quite bizarre, really. You know, why aren't you supporting him and saying, oh, well, at least it's good that he's saying these things, and let's see if it comes to anything? Because you're the one who wants governments and stuff like that, so Donald Trump is proposing some things that you say that you're in favour of, putting more control in local communities and stuff like that, and yet the person who seems to be proposing this more than the other, you absolutely venomously hate. So you're just all over the place, really. You've got no coherent argument. You talk about authenticity, yet there can hardly be anyone on the entire planet who's less authentic than you. And you talk about humane politics. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. But it does sound an awful lot like some powerful people are treating less powerful people in a humane way. And as I've said in a previous video, humane tends to be a word that you use in relation to animals, treating animals in a humane way. So you're talking about the general populace who are not part of the political elite. Almost in animalistic terms by talking about humane politics. So you're not really adding anything, are you? This article's just all over the place, and you're saying one thing and meaning another, which is what you've done your whole life, I think. So there isn't any change here. So, the leviathans of the party system will sooner or later have to look at their structures and accountability, not as a step to plebiscite populism, but in terms of what they can do to nurture discussion and decision in the actual communities to which people, not the people, belong. It's hard to know what to say to such madness. Because, I mean, let's take the example of Brexit here. So, there was a vote, a referendum, and more British people voted to leave the European Union than voted to stay in the European Union. So, that's a democratic election there. So, the decision has been taken on the basis that more people wanted to leave than wanted to stay. So this decision wasn't the decision that you wanted, and I've showed many clips of you talking about you couldn't believe it and that kind of thing. It was just hilarious. You were absolutely stunned when you woke up the next day, and all this kind of thing. Anyway, so that's quite funny. That was quite funny in itself. So I've been saying that you just want to bring in a Stalinist dictatorship and the New World Order and all this kind of thing. So you've now created this entity called the people, and this is what you're objecting to, because it doesn't. The people doesn't seem to include any actual people. So there's a difference between the people and people. I can't even talk about this, it's so hilarious. The people. The people, presumably the people who are the people who voted to leave the European Union and in America voted for Donald Trump, who you didn't want to be elected. So that's the people, and the people are bad because the people doesn't do what you want. But people who are not the people, I'm getting quite confused here. They're not the same people as the people, the ones who voted the way that you didn't want them to vote. So you're trying to pretend you're helping people, but because people didn't do what you wanted them to do, you've now created this other entity called the people, who are not the people. I can't really get my head around this, it's just too mad. Even you are not usually this mad. Anyway, yes, so the first part of this statement here, that the leviathans of the party system will sooner or later have to look at their structures and accountability, not as a step to plebiscite populism. So plebiscite idea of democracy, as I've said previously, is the idea that the whole electorate should be consulted on certain important matters, like membership of the European Union, for example. So everybody is balloted on that, rather than political parties making a decision to leave or to stay. So you don't like the plebiscite idea of democracy because the people, or people, I'm not sure which, one or the other or both of them, however they're arranged in your thought processes, because the people, like 62 million people in Britain, although not all of them are eligible to vote, but I don't know how many constitute the electorate, so I'll just say 62 million. 62 million people are harder to control than two political parties, aren't they? I don't know who the people is. I'm just too confused by this. I don't think I can go on. I'm losing the will to live looking at this. It's so insane. I think if I understood this, I would actually be insane. Only an insane person could understand something like this. People and the people. What on earth are you talking about? You're as mad as a hatter. And so, for significant parts of a population, theatrical politics comes to look like the only option, a dramatic articulation of the problems of powerlessness for which the exact details of economic or social reality are irrelevant. This delivers people into the hands of another kind of dishonest politics, the fact-free manipulation of emotion by populist adventurers. Well, all I want to say in relation to this, when we're talking about the exact details of economic or social reality, well, you don't provide any details, do you? You just make impressionistic statements to try and manipulate people in the direction that you want them to go. And I've given some examples of that earlier in this video, so about impressionistic statements about Donald Trump's attitude to Muslims and Mexicans, things that you allege he's said, but you don't actually say what he's said, do you? So people can see for themselves and make their own mind up. It's this very impressionistic way that you communicate in order to manipulate people, to form the opinions you want them to have, and to manipulate them in the direction that you want them to go. You are a perception manager for the New World Order. So this delivers people into the hands of another kind of dishonest politics, the fact-free manipulation of emotion by populist adventurers. So you're describing yourself there, aren't you? Because you're the fact-free manipulator of emotion, as I've just illustrated. There is an issue here about education. There's always an issue about education when you're talking. You want to educate people who don't think the way that you do and who present different information. And you seem to think that by talking about facts and saying that other people's opinions are fact-free, that this convinces people that you're telling the truth and presenting facts and evidence, whereas in fact you don't present any facts and evidence. You just make impressionistic statements and malign your political opponents. And then you invent entities like the people as well, so your madness is spiralling out of control. So you say then that this education can become another hostage to fortune if all it is saying is that a benighted populace should be educated out of false consciousness. Well, unfortunately, Rowan, even though you appear to be condemning this view in this statement, it's in fact what you do. So you're accusing other people of Stalinism in this article when you're in fact the Stalinist. You're trying to redefine your political opinions as something other than communism. It's just completely insane. And now you're saying that it's a bad thing to imply that education means just educating a benighted populace out of false consciousness. But that's what you're trying to do, because you consider anyone who doesn't agree with your opinion and who doesn't do what you want as having a kind of false consciousness. Because you're God, you see, at the centre of it all. This is how you understand yourself, as I've demonstrated in previous videos. So your version of consciousness is the correct one, and no amount of evidence is going to convince you otherwise. So it's your job as God, isn't it, to be educating other people and telling them what reality is and how they ought to think, even without presenting any evidence for that. So being educated out of false consciousness by those who know better. Well, you think you're one of the people who knows better, one of the experts. You think you're an expert, and you've been presented to people, particularly Anglicans, as an expert as well, even though when we look at what you're actually saying, it's obvious that you're nothing of the sort. And then you say that we're now encouraged to hate and mistrust experts. So you've made this an emotive issue, haven't you? That people don't listen to experts or so-called experts because they hate them. Well, maybe they just look at the evidence and see that the experts are not so expert after all. And in fact, since the information the so-called experts are giving turns out to be false or misinformed, or not 100% of the story quite a lot of the time, we are living in the information age, so it's quite easy, relatively speaking, for people to find out a lot of information for themselves relatively quickly that would previously have taken a long time for people to research and discover. So people may be just finding out the actual truth and the actual evidence, and this is why they're mistrusting experts or so-called experts, rather than because they've got some emotional animosity towards them. And I've mentioned before that you tend to say that your political opponents are acting on an emotional basis rather than thinking rationally. And one example I've given of that previously was when you were talking at St Martin in the Fields on the 19th of September 2016, and someone asked you a question about Brexit, and you said that the people in South Wales had voted very strongly to leave the European Union, but in fact the people in South Wales had benefited from European Union grants, and therefore the conclusion you drew from this, or that you said that you drew from this, was that because the people in South Wales were fearful, and that's why they'd voted that way. And I did say in response to this that the people in South Wales hadn't benefited from the European Union, because even if everything else just stayed the same, then there was no reason why the British government couldn't just give grants to people in South Wales without having to send it into a foreign country and a foreign administration to be have the top level of it skimmed off to pay for all the bureaucracy and the career politicians. So the argument you were making wasn't logical, yet you were accusing the people in South Wales of not acting in a logical way and not thinking things through rationally and coming to a rational decision about how to vote in the referendum as to whether Britain should leave the European Union or not. So this is kind of the same thing here, where you're talking about people hating experts, hating and mistrusting them, whereas, well, why should we trust what someone is telling us anyway? If they can't show us the evidence, this is where I've got this information from, you can check it if you want. Why should you take someone's word for something, particularly when you can easily research the information for yourself? You like to be encouraging people to trust, and I've made videos about that before as well. And also where you were telling people that Jesus said to trust him and to trust, we should trust, when Jesus never actually used the word trust at all. He never said to trust him. He never said to trust anybody. So you're attributing again here an emotional state to people who are not thinking and acting in the way that you want them to.
We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control.
The learning that matters is the experience of genuine political debate and decision-making at local levels. Well, there's two things here. I mean, first of all, this is an article about the US presidential election and the success of Donald Trump, and you're against Donald Trump and never stop criticising him without really giving too many concrete criticisms, mostly impressionistic stuff, as I've said. So you should really be thrilled at some of the policies that Donald Trump is proposing if you really wanted more decision making at local level. Because, for example, like the majority of the American people presumably voted for Donald Trump, more people than voted for Hillary Clinton anyway. So those people made a decision, and you're outraged by this decision. And have even had to construct the people as opposed to people to cope with your own fragmentation about political situations. So that you can pretend you really care for people. It's just the people that you object to. So what does decision making at a local level mean in this context then? And also in relation to the Brexit vote, how would it help decision making at local level had Britain stayed in the European Union? Surely the opposite is the case. So your political positions on such things as the election of Donald Trump and the Brexit vote are incongruous with you pretending you care here about decision making at local levels when really you want a more centralised system of power like the New World Order, and that's who you're working for. Then you talk about genuine political debate. Well, what does that even mean? What is political debate? Are you talking about debate in governments or government agencies or in city councils or county councils? What are you talking about with political debate? And you like to have a lot of debate, don't you? Because you don't like closure, as I've mentioned in previous videos. You want to keep everything up in the air and being discussed for as long as possible. And this paralyses the system, the organisation or whatever, that no decisions are ever made and there's just this ongoing discussion and debate all the time and nothing's ever decided. And as I've mentioned before as well, that this technique of subversion comes straight out of the CIA manual of simple subversion, which you can read on the CIA website. And of course you're being controlled by handlers in intelligence agencies, aren't you? So all you're proposing is another subversive method from this CIA manual. So the learning that matters is the experience of genuine political debate and decision making at local levels, the experience of identifying challenges, negotiating sustainable solutions, and learning to manage conflict. So the experience of identifying challenges. What does that even mean? What does this mean? And who are the people going to be negotiating with? The government, the other political party, the people in the neighbourhood? What's all this identifying challenges and negotiating sustainable solutions about that needs any form of central planning, that people in local areas can't come to these decisions themselves? It's hard to know what you're talking about when we look at your wider political values, such as being as much part of as possible of global governments and global taxation and this kind of thing, and then you're saying people need more control at a local level. Well, I'm not disagreeing with that, but as I just said, this is incongruous in terms of your wider political agenda, and in fact you're only talking the talk of giving more control to people locally, but in fact your real political agenda is going in exactly the opposite direction. Sustainable solutions for what? For what? And learning to manage conflict without violent rupture or the demonising of minorities. So, learning to manage conflict without violent rupture or the demonising of minorities. Well, you're talking about this in the context of the Donald Trump election victory, and a lot of your rhetoric around this, without providing any evidence or quotations from what he's actually said, as I've said before, has been around demonising Donald Trump as a racist. So, if anyone's been doing any demonising, it's you, really. And so, Donald Trump, as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of anything that he's said that's demonised minority groups in the United States of American citizens. He has said he wants to stop illegal immigration and immigration from Muslim countries because he's worried about Islamic terrorism. But why would he be worried about Islamic terrorism? Oh, I know, it's because people like you have been telling him that Muslims knocked down the Twin Towers when you know perfectly well it isn't true. And also you were providing propaganda around the London bombings as well. So if Donald Trump is worried about Islamic terrorism, then you're one of the main reasons for that, aren't you? People like you who are lying about terrorist acts perpetrated by Luciferians like yourself, and then saying that Muslims did it. So you're the problem, really, aren't you, Rowan, not the solution?
Now, why do you think this didn't work? You know, all of this racism and sexism and phobia this and horrible person that. Why, if these attacks have been going on, you know, since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, as the saying goes, why do you think they didn't land and take root in the way that they used to this time?
They didn't, because first of all, you had Diamond and Silk.
That's right.
Two black women
Yes.
calling them out on it.
That's right.
And then the next thing is, you're not going to be able to get us and the world to believe that this man is a racist when he's been in the public eye for 30 and 40 years and was never called that. You
That's
see what I'm
right.
saying?
Yes.
So we didn't believe anything. And all of our supporters and all of our fans, we told them, don't believe nothing that the media is
That's
pushing.
right.
And I will always say this here. They don't stop losers, but they will stop a winner. When you see the media trying to take somebody down like
Yes.
that, trying to assassinate their character, that's because he's winning, baby.
That's
And I
right.
told them, y'all get out and y'all go vote.
And we also told them, don't focus on the polls, focus on the goal.
That's right.
They did not expect the silent majority to awaken.
That's right.
As every time they tried to take and chop us down, we went further in the grassroots. We talked to people, congregated with people, and people was enthused
Yeah.
about Donald Trump.
Because if you notice, they didn't have us in the mainstream media.
Right. didn't put us
They
there no more.
took Diamond and Silk out of the mainstream media
Uh-huh.
because I think we may have had the power to sway from what I heard.
That's right.
So what we did, we went out and we talked to people.
To
We
people.
traveled, talked to people doing the grassroots work.
Yes.
And those people got out and
They
voted.
got out and
Yes.
voted, and those people wasn't polled.
That's right.
They forgot about the silent majority.
That's-
So let's hear what you guys have to say to the protesters. They're not really listening to me very much, but I think that you guys could really give them something to think about, because I don't know exactly where it's coming from. This, I guess they've been listening to a lot of mainstream media about Donald Trump as some sort of Voldemort evil character or whatever, and they're just freaking out. But what is it that they need to hear so that they can calm down a little bit, deep breath, assess the situation, be patient, learn the man's policies? Because it seems like there's a lot of just people out there like stoking these crazy people out with pitchforks to try and get them more and more angry and upset. I don't know what the end goal is. It doesn't seem very good. What is it that these protesters need to hear? If you could kind of sit them down and get them to calm down for 5 minutes, what would you want to tell them?
I will tell them, when fear comes knocking, open the door with faith.
That's right.
Give Donald Trump a chance.
That's right.
He wants to work for you, baby.
Exactly.
Give him a chance. That's what I would say. Because you know what? You cannot stoke fear with more fear.
That's right.
We can't be out there arguing with them. But give him a chance. When fear comes knocking, open the door with faith. Give him a chance to work for you.
That's right. And look at his track record. Look at Donald Trump's track record. Look at how he worked for all of us, not just some, but all Americans, hard day after day to get to where he's at right now. And I believe that if he can work that hard to get to this point, imagine what he can do to get to the next 4 years and then the next 4 years after that. Give Donald Trump a chance. Right now, he's really our only hope.
And another thing, when I see them call him out of his name or call him that racist word, he can't be racist. He had 2 black girls.
That's right.
That he didn't even know from Adam.
That's right.
On his stage.
Yes.
Gave us his microphone.
That's right.
He's not racist, baby.
Not racist.
He's a realist.
That's right.
And he sees the reality of what's going on in America.
Yes.
He didn't like it. He's our voice. He's the voice for the voiceless.
Yes.
And he's standing up for all of the American people, baby.
That's right.
And that means black people, you included, even Hispanic people.
Yes.
If you are an American, you are included in the process.
Even the protesters in the street.
That's right.
Working for you as well.
That's right. He's your president too.
That's right.
Right, so we're back on the same screenshot I used last week of one of the sayings of light and love of St. John of the Cross, number 30. El alma dura de su amor propio se endurece. The soul, hardened with love of itself or self-love, only becomes harder. So we're seeing again another example of this, really, in this article in the New Statesman, that rather than admit that you're wrong about anything, you're still trying to make out that you're some kind of superior political commentator, morally superior to other people who don't share your political views and who want to go in another direction, who don't do what you want, don't do the right thing as you see it. And as I've said, all morality is self-referential in your case. Moral actions are doing what you want, giving you what you want, and saying that you're wonderful. And immoral actions are disagreeing with you, not doing what you want, and not giving you what you want, and criticising you. This is how these things are defined in Rowan Williams' world. So we're just back in the same place again, all the same strategies over and over again in this article. It never changes. As I've said, psychopaths never learn, and for some reason that I don't really understand, you're entirely attached to your narcissistic delusions, and you'll never admit that you've done anything wrong to anybody, or that you're part of this evil conspiracy to take over the whole world and eliminate everyone in it. You've gone to the extent of making a distinction between people and the people, so you can still pretend that you're in favour of empowering people, although when they don't do what you want, you change their identity from people to the people, so that you can criticise and malign them and say that they're wrong and wicked and stupid and all this kind of thing. So here we are again, your soul, which is hardened with self-love, only becoming harder. So I'll leave it there for this evening, but don't forget that I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend, because obviously I'm still saving myself for my beloved and flexing my fingertips so that I can get my hands on his magnificent feet and give him an amazing foot massage. So I'm really looking forward to that, and so is he as well. We'll be in each other's arms before you know it. So, and also don't forget to be alert, because obviously I'm going to be turning up to make a citizen's arrest for terrorism. So I'll leave it there then. Hasta la próxima.
Try to change me, you're wasting your time. Now I got something much better in mind. Robert De Niro's waiting, talking Italian. You bring me alive. He's a bad, bad boy. I'm a bad, bad girl. And we're getting back to
This is why Catholics have the best sex.
Adelante.